we all share one experience in common, every one of us. And that is this simple. We have all at some point walked in here for the first time. That might be you today. It could be your first time. I still remember when we were live streaming on the banks of the Mitchell River, and Philip and Jeanette walked into our background little cheer squad, and you've never left. And we're so thankful for you both and what you have brought to Redgum since that very first day. And the live streaming back then was our heart. COVID pushed us over the edge to get going fast. But even just 2 weeks ago, we found out we were going to have no power here in this building. And a team of guys put in so much effort to tweak whatever they tweaked so that we could live stream, because you online are so important to us. And this might be your first time online watching, or you might be a beloved serial offender and this is something you do regularly. All I know is that the numbers of those that are watching online just keeps growing and growing. And whether it's online or whether you've just walked in here for the first time, whatever has brought you here, there's a shared story. And it will be the God factors. It's the reasons behind what God is doing in our individual lives, how he's brought us together. But this I do know. When we walk in here for the first time, it's because we are looking for a church. Here's the problem. Paul describes us, his bride, as a bride with spots and wrinkles and blemishes and imperfections. And for some people in our community, church has actually become a dirty word. And I understand why. I have had beautiful Christians say to me, I still love Jesus, but I've given up on his church. And when you just look around, and if all you see is faces, you'll actually miss the fact that God's working on our stories beneath the surface, every one of us. He's doing something. And it's what he's doing is such a big, bold, audacious plan. It almost seems impossible, but this is what God is up to in our stories. I want to read this to you. It's out of Ephesians 4, verse 27. It says, this is what God's doing, in order to present the church to himself in all its beauty, pure and faultless, without spot or wrinkle or any other imperfections. That's chapter 5 in Ephesians. But if you go back in Ephesians to chapter 2, you'll find that Paul's describing how people, nothing like each other, with different cultural backgrounds, different worldviews and understandings and beliefs, how we come together as one in Jesus. Isn't that actually what we're looking for? Wherever you look in this world around us, in our own personal lives, there's a searching. Every one of us, there's a searching. And God has a home. God has somewhere for you and I to belong to. And in this chapter 2 of Ephesians, in verse 19, I want you to hear Paul's words. And this is in the Message. He says, that's plain enough, isn't it? You're no longer wandering exiles. This kingdom of faith is now your country. You're no longer strangers or outsiders. You belong here with as much right to the name Christian as anyone. Other translations use the words fellow citizens. And then he continues, God is building a home, is using all of us, irrespective of actually how we got here, in what he's building. And as I look around, I know that to be true. When I look at the lives of the individuals that are forming Redgum at this point in time, there is not one person I want to get rid of. Not one. In fact, the quality of the people that God is gathering, I love you too, Joel. Yes. I know. I saw your mind whirling, right? Yes. Anne looked at you. There are some times in a church gathering you do not look at the person next to you. So when someone says there's not one person here that's not wanted, don't look at the person next to you. And Anne, that's a terrible thing to do. You didn't. Now she's lying. That's two things, 2 marks against Anne this morning. Yes. Nick, if you're brave enough to try to escort Anne out of here, you either lack wisdom or experience when it comes to Anne. Just recently, Charlie and I got to be the privilege of being part of a documentary that's going to air on SBS next year on the story of Bairnsdale, and it's told through the DNA of the residents of this community. And in this TV documentary, in the preparation for it, we had to answer this questionnaire. And they told us some of the answers during the filming of this. And one of the things that they told us was that of all the people that they surveyed for this TV program, people that have volunteered, people that want to be part of this TV program, 1/3 did not feel connected to this community. And I was shocked. I was really shocked, and it just showed you the searching that's going on in the lives of people. And one of the beautiful things that this program did, it gave permission for people to come together and tell their story. And I was inspired by what a TV program did. It made me want to be a better Christian. It made me want us to be part of a healthier church, the way they cared for our community. Because see, the human heart longs for someone to hear our story, just to listen, really listen. I'm not very good at doing that, naturally. And I'm trying to grow in my capacity to hear and to listen. Sometimes over the years when I've been on the phone to my brother Ken or sister Lindell, Coral will stick a little note under my nose and saying, ask them something about them, you know. But as I've come to understand God's grace in my life, I've come to realise that listening is an act of grace. It's when you listen, when you care enough that someone actually feels loved, because the motivation behind grace is love. When it says, for God so loved, he gave. He didn't just give a gift. He gave Jesus. And grace is a person. It's not just a gift. Grace is a person called Jesus. Now, today is going to be a little bit of a first for me. Just not a first, a thirst. No, hang on. Today is going to be a first for me. Yeah. I don't think I've ever preached a 3-point sermon, ever. I just wander around. But today, I just have 3 points, and you can relax because I've basically covered the first one. We'll pick it up a little bit more. But so this is my first go at a 3-point sermon, And I must admit, I stole it from one of Jesus' mates called Peter. And that's where I grabbed this from. But if you want to be part of a church, don't you want to be part of a great church? Don't you want to be part of a church where you can be proud to bring your friends and not feel embarrassed? A place where you feel safe, where you come and no matter how you're feeling that day, you walk out encouraged because God's word has been presented in its truth and it's been presented in a way that's helpful. Now, did you notice that I used the word you want to be part of a great church? I didn't say, do you want to be part of a perfect church? And when I say that, echoing around in your heads is the thought, there's no such thing as a perfect church. And that echo is a problem because we're not being completely honest with ourselves. Because the truth is we actually are looking for a perfect church. It's what we set our expectations by, and it's what we measure our experience by. If you're searching for something, it means that you have lost something. Who has been searching for a hat or glasses and you were wearing them? But normally, we search for something we've lost, like a phone. If I had never tasted chocolate, ever in my life, when Coral leaves the house, I would not search for anything she's secretly hidden because I haven't ever tasted it. We only search for what we have lost or what we have once tasted. See, back in the garden, we lost our perfect church. We lost our perfect world. And all human behaviour since then has been the scrambling, a drivenness because of the loss factor. And all religions, political movements, are attempts to try to get back what was lost back in the garden. And Jesus never came to establish a religion. And when his own team wanted him to bring political answers to the nation's problems through his authority and power that he carried, he disappointed them because that's not what he came to do. Jesus came to bring a culture of another world back to this world, the culture of heaven, the kingdom of heaven that was lost back in the garden. In 1938, the first Superman comic was produced. Even in our human imaginations, we know that the answer to the needs of this world come from another world. Now, in recent weeks, we've looked at 2 Peter chapter 1, where he has given us this recipe of how to personally experience God's grace and God's peace in abundance. But if we go back to 1 Peter chapter 4, Peter gives us 3 points, 3 ways to get rid of all the ugly bits out of a church, the things that we instinctively know aren't to be here, and the things that we long to see God and something else replaced. And Peter gives us 3 ways to create a perfect church. And in verse 8 of 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8, he starts off with this, above all. And he's talking about priorities. See, the secret to life is understanding priorities and then organising our energy around those priorities. Jesus, he brought it down so simple. He just said, there's only really one priority. Seek first his kingdom and right relationship with the king. And when he said that, he said something very powerful. He said, if you can get that first thing right, if you can seek first, all the other things you need will seek you. Just get that. There's a priority in life. And the word priority and the word seek, they're big words, because a priority is something that comes first. It's what you value the most highest. It's what's really important. So Peter says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Now, just to be clear, the word sin that Peter's using there is our faults. It's our human failings. It's when someone lets you down, when they promised and they didn't deliver, when you had expectations, and it's the errors we make. Now, it's a completely different Greek word that Peter used when he says that love covers this multitude of our faults, our sins. Completely different word than when Jesus said, if your brother or sister sins against them, you go to them privately, try and sort it out privately. If they don't get it, they won't acknowledge what they've done, take someone else. And if that doesn't work, out the suckers publicly. Like, just get it out there. Don't cover it. But that is a completely different Greek word than when Peter's talking about sin. When the findings of the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse were released in 2017, Archbishop Hart from the Catholic Church, he made this statement, and this is what he said: this is a shameful past in which a prevailing culture of secrecy and self-protection led to unnecessary suffering for victims and their families. I think Jesus would have made a much stronger statement. He talked about millstones and drownings at sea for just hurting one child. But covering up, institutionally covering up, that is ghastly. It's really ugly, ghastly. And we are not to cover up abuse of any form, whether that's emotional and spiritual, physical, sexually, in God's kingdom. No. But what Peter's talking about is grace on steroids. It's the most beautiful thing when we cover the faults of another. Now, I don't want you to get distracted, but we're about to have a little competition. And Martin, you don't know that you're part of this, but now you do. So Martin, come on Martin, come up here. And Joel, now I'm going to make this worth your while. Come here, Joel. That's the prize. Now, come over here, you two. All you have to do is run down this aisle, around the back, without taking out any chairs or people in them. You still play rugby?
Is tackling allowed?
No tackling. Can we shift that little maybe? Thanks, Joel. Yeah, because that's going to get taken out. So, over here. At the same time, yes. Side by side. This is going to be feet in, no tripping. So this is first back here, gets this. On your marks. Go. Oh. Well done. Thank you very much. Sharing's caring. No, just keep it for yourself. But when Peter talked about loving each other deeply, the word deeply is a word, the Greek word, it's a word picture of a race where you're doing all you can for the prize, and the prize is to love someone. And when you love it deeply, it comes from a Greek word, the root word of that means you're totally task focused. See, when the boys took off, all Joel could think of was that chocolate just standing here. And he was prepared to do anything. Martin, you pushed him. Martin. And you call yourself a Jesus follower, right? And you pushed him to get the prize. And that's what to love each other deeply is, because the prize is so amazing. And the motivation for Peter telling us to push forward for this prize, to race, is because that sort of love covers. And it's a loving each other deeply in not an emotional sense so much as an action. Like the boys, when they took off, it was an action. There wasn't a lot of emotion. They weren't sort of crying about it. You just wanted to win, didn't you? Yeah. You just want to impress Melinda. Yes. No. You want to win. That's the heart of it, right? That's how practical it is, right? It's an action. It's a priority. And it covers. Now, I think I naturally have a capacity to cover. Especially when I was a teenager, I covered information. When I would come home from school, Mum would say, "Have you got any homework, Lex?" And I would say, "No." And I covered that information because I didn't want my mum to worry about me not doing it. And that the Greek word, Nick, actually means to hide. It's to hide the knowledge of a thing. When we cover another Christian, we're hiding the knowledge of what we are aware of. It's the opposite to what happens on a little thing called social media, where we expose the faults of others. But see, love covers. And sometimes in our Christian way of doing things, we find subtle ways to not cover. We will say things like, "I'm really concerned about so-and-so. Can you pray for them?" And we don't cover. And we even say things like, this particular person, they're really great at this, but they're a visionary. They've got the big picture, but they're hopeless at the detail. Why do we do that? That isn't covering. That's exposing. I've shared this story before, but I grew up as a preacher's kid. And I remember Dad telling me a story where there was all the gathering of the ministers of the town in this little room at the back of the church one day, and someone had the bright idea that they should all share some of their struggles, their private struggles. And the first guy said, "Well, I have a little trouble with drink, and they went round. I'm watching the wrong stuff, and they went round all the different ministers of the town, and they got to the last guy who hadn't said a word, and they said, "Well, what do you struggle with?" He said, I struggle with gossip, and I can't wait to get out of here." Love doesn't do that. Love is a motivation and grace is the action. And what Peter's saying is, A perfect church is not a church without faults. It's a church that covers the faults. Mandy had the microphone this morning and she covered. She did not tell you that her beloved husband supports the Swans. She never mentioned that, Aaron, at all. She covered out of love. She covered. I won't even mention that by half time you gone away from the TV and wouldn't watch it anymore. But see, love covers. The second point that Peter makes, and it's a shorter point, to offer hospitality without grumbling. And when I read that, I laughed. Like, he's talking to the early church. We have this romantic idea of they met together daily, they shared everything they had. They grumbled because they were people. And Peter's saying, if you can offer hospitality without grumbling, that is the kingdom, the culture of heaven. See, 2 weeks ago, we had a sausage sizzle. Do you know why? And it's not because we had lots of sausage left over from the drive-through Father's Day thing. I want us to grow in our hospitality together. Last week we had toasted cheese sandwiches. Today we're having more of those leftover sausages. But the reason is to shift our hospitality to another level. See, I used to think that Sundays were the icing and not the cake. And the goal was that we would gather a crowd on a Sunday, and then we would get you into home groups where you could experience hospitality, where you could experience community, and you could be discipled. But our world has changed. And for some of you, before you ever walked in here for the first time, you watched Redgum online and you experienced our content. And you could stay home and still watch the content. But when you walk in here, you're looking for something more. And it's hospitality. It's community. It's being part of a village life. And don't misunderstand me. Home groups still play a really, really big role in the life of Redgum. And ideally, it would be great if everyone could be here every Sunday and people every week be in a home group. But that's not reality. And for some of you, this is the only time that you can be part of a bigger thing than your own experiences in the week in your own family. This is the only time you can be part of a Christian community. And so I want us to lift privately, in home groups, in the large gatherings, in every area of the life of Redgum, lift our hospitality without grumbling. So, Peter's first point, love that covers. And his second point, hospitality without whinging. And his third point, last point, is grace. Hang on. Don't you need grace to cover? Don't you need grace to offer hospitality without grumbling? So why does Peter have a third point? Grace. And what makes it different? And when he brings this third point out, It's different because it changes the dynamics from the first two. And I use the word dynamics very, very deliberately. Now, reading out dictionary definitions of words is really boring. So this is a risk. So I'm going to read out what the definition of dynamics is. This is it. The forces or priorities. You're already bored. No, we'll come back to it. Okay. The forces or properties which stimulate growth, development, or change within a system or a process. You can express love that covers individually. You can display hospitality without grumbling. You can take someone out for a coffee. You can have someone from you. You can do that as an individual. But you can't do this third point as a one person. It's a dynamic that changes because it goes from one person to a team sport. Peter's third point is a team sport, and he describes us as a bride, but we're also a family. We are a body, and a body has multiple systems in it. And it's the combination of all these things that take away the spot and the wrinkle and the blemishes that's in God's bride. And so verse 10, his last point is this. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others. And I love this. Faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. Various forms means multicoloured, diverse, variegated. Motley. I can do motley really well. As a kid in Sunday school, we would sing this song, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." And some of you already are so traumatised from that experience, you can remember that. It's already in your head, that tune. It's all buzzing around there. And when Jesus first dropped that image into our imagination, he wasn't speaking to little Sunday school kids. It was to adults. It was to bigger people. But what's our light? It's God's grace. Here's the thing. You and I are not a Tesla car. We don't have any little lithium-ion batteries inside of us. We don't even have an old 12-volt battery that generates the light that shines. Instead, God has put within every single one of us a little glass prism. And Peter calls it a gift that each one of us has received. And when we experience God's grace coming into us, it hits this prism, our gift, and it shines out of our lives a spectrum of colours that vary. It's God's grace. It's your gift reflecting God's grace. Don't miss this. In the Strong's Concordance, there is over 5,000 Greek words in there that are used in the New Testament. The word gift is the word charisma. And of all the 5,000 plus words, the two words that are side by side, because they're so closely linked, out of the 5,000, the two words close beside each other, right beside each other, is charisma, that's your gift, and God's grace, his charis. Those two words, God's grace and God's gift, are so interlinked, they are literally almost the same thing. And the definition, the Greek understanding of the word grace, not a church understanding, but the Greeks understanding the word was this. It's the divine influence upon your heart and its reflection, the light, its reflection in your life. So according to Peter, the perfect church has very little to do with preaching or worship. It has everything to do with a place where you can find love that covers, hospitality that, without the pushback, and where grace is played as a team sport. And those three things are very, very high priority in God's kingdom. And they're the things that were lost back in the garden. It's what our world, what we long for, what we're searching for. And if you want to know where you fit in the team, what your gift looks like, it's really simple. It's whatever we can do to help someone else, that'll benefit someone else. And here's the thing, it comes with a little plus. It's like we help them, but when we do it, it just somehow it's different than if someone else did it. It's just got the little plus factor. So I've invited two people, Mark and Denise. Do you want to just come out the front? Mark, can you grab that other stool from over there? Yeah, sit down just so you look relaxed. Grab a microphone each. She's got a Bible, so you're going to have to sit down. This could take a while. No. The reason I asked Mark and Denise to come out is because, I'm going to start with Mark. Mark you've just sort of retired, you look too young to retire, but run his own business for many years, employed people, and high capacity, highly skilled person can do many, many things. But for years, he would take a thing called a lawnmower. I don't know what they are, but they cut grass. And you would mow Coral's mother's lawn. And you've done that for many people. There was a lady in Lakes in recent times where you would travel there and you would mow her lawn. And you have served with a gift to help others for many, many years in ways people would not even have a clue. Why? Why?
Lex asked that question, why do I like to help? And Denise has got something on the phone. I'm not real good with technology. I'm just going to start off with saying one reason. This morning we do devotions. It's called Daily Bread. Does anyone do that? Yeah, we really like it. And I'm going to read just a little bit about what we learnt. Actually, can I stand up? This morning I came in, I talked to John, and we're talking about heart, not necessarily his heart, but hearts in general, and how fascinating the heart is. You know, there's a little. He described it as like a distributor, and if you know cars, they send out a spark and they ignite a combustion chamber, and your motor goes. Well, the heart's a little bit like that. It's got a electrode. Where's Cam? Cam's in here. I've got to be careful what I say because you're talking a load of rubbish. But there's
Cam's a doctor. Yeah.
It stimulates the heart. And then this morning we talked a little bit about the heart in our devotion. The human heart is an amazing organ. This fist-sized pumping station. This is an American, so it's not in metric, but it's impressive anyway. This fist-sized pumping station weighs about 7 and 15 ounces. Daily it beats around 100,000 times and pumps 2,000 gallons of blood through the 60,000 miles of blood vessels. That's miles, so it's nearly double that in kilometres. With such a strategic assignment and heavy workload, it's understandable why heart health is central to the well-being of the entire body. So that's just one reason why I love to serve the Lord, because how fantastic He is. He is an awesome God. And that's just a little take. I'm just standing on two sticks here, legs. Do you know what it takes to balance me right now? Some of us are a lot more top heavier than others. I'm a little bit top heavy. But I challenge anyone to try and make something that will just stand, that can run, that can jump, that can hop, can do that. It's phenomenal. Our God has made me and made us how we are. And that's just the tip of an iceberg. He's an awesome God. And that's one of the reasons why I serve Him. So that's why I find my Christian duty is to serve where I can. I think it's probably important for us to find out where we can serve. Lex touched on it a little bit. And if you don't know what your abilities are, maybe ask someone. Sometimes we don't know where we can best serve. And sometimes your parent, your wife, or your good friend can tell you. So ask someone, where do you think, what's my abilities that I can serve? We're all different with different abilities. Now, Lex flogged my verse, because I was going to read 1 Peter 4:10-11. So I'll read it again. God has given each of you a gift from His great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. Do you have the gift of speaking? Then speak as though God Himself was speaking through you. Do you have the gift of helping others? Do it with all the strength and energy that God supplies. Then everything you do will bring glory to God through Christ Jesus. All glory and power to Him forever and ever. Amen. So it is all about God. Now, serving, I found, is not always easy or likeable. It's sometimes it can be hard, and you've got to force yourself to do it. Many years ago, there was a song which Denise is going to sing the first verse. I did ask you about it. It's only a simple little song, and it goes something like this.
Oh, now he's put me on the spot. It's done with a very tongue-in-cheek calypso tune. Send me, Lord, to the island. Palm trees sway by the shore. Life is slow when the cool wind blow, and I won't have trouble no more.
Hey.
Very good.
And it goes on. And what it's saying is this guy, he wants to be a Christian, he wants to be a missionary, but Lord, send me to this fantastic tropical island where I can have coconuts and enjoy life. But look, serving God isn't always like that. It can be hard. And because of God's greatness, that's why I serve Him, not because it's always easy and not always nice. I do it because I'm called to help and because I owe Christ everything for what He has done and will do for me. So this is just a tip. This is a start. Wait till we get to heaven. It's not earning your salvation either. It's by grace, which is Lex has been talking about. By grace, not by works. So don't feel that I've got to work really hard and I'll get more brownie points in heaven, or you work your way to heaven. You don't. God's already saved you, but it's like a heart thing. You do it because you love God and because you want to do it. I'm going to finish off with just reading something. A woman was married to a man who she did not love. He made her get up every morning at 5 o'clock, cook his breakfast, and serve it at 6 o'clock sharp. He made her wait on him and was exacting in his demands on her time. Her life was made miserable by trying to satisfy the requests of her husband. Finally, he died. After a few years, she married again. This time, she married a man whom she really loved. One day, while clearing out some old papers, she came across the strict sets of rules her former husband had written out for her to obey. Carefully, she read them over. get up at 5, serve breakfast at 6 sharp. On and on she read. Then she stopped and thought and realised that she was fulfilling every single one of his demands. But she had not realised it because this time she was doing it for love's sake. So it is not difficult to serve the Lord Jesus when we really love him. Thanks.
Good on you, Mark. And then Denise, you in your own right have served people. You and Mark have a very similar gifting upon your lives and your work as a team, but you have served in all sorts of ways. What motivates you? Why do you do that?
I've been a Christian a long time, and I guess you can boil down Christianity to the two main things that Jesus told us, and that's to love God with all your heart and strength, and to love others as you love yourself. So when I was thinking about this answer, why do I serve, I thought about a baby. When a baby is born, you can speak all the loving words to it that you can think of, but it's not going to make that baby feel loved for very long. It might like the soothing sound of your voice, but it's not going to be very long before that baby is demanding very loudly from you that you meet its needs. And so you pick up that baby and you feed it and you change it and you wake up in the middle of the night for it and you show it your love by how you meet its needs. And at its very beginning, that's how it receives love. So love's got to be shown in practical ways. It can't be just words, although, as you know, words are important as well, but love's got to be expressed. And as Lex said, Mark and I have always just done practical things, and I suppose where we see a need, we'll meet it. And I just wanted to tell you a story of something that happened to me a few years ago. I was going to visit a friend, and I'd set aside some time to visit her during the day. I arrived at her house, knocked on the door, and she wasn't home. And while I was standing there waiting for her to answer the door, I started looking around at the ground, and I saw she had weeds in her garden at the front door. And when I realised she wasn't home, and I thought, well, I've got time up my sleeve now because I thought I was going to be spending some time with her. So instead of having a cuppa and chatting, I started weeding her garden, and I just pulled out all the weeds at the front door. It wasn't hard, they were just in loose stones, but I weeded her garden and I left, and I may have left a note on the door saying I called in and missed you or whatever, but I can't remember, but she knew that it was me that had been to visit, and she sent me a text, and she said how moved she was that I had weeded her garden because she'd been going through a tough time, and it was her birthday that day, which I had no idea that it was her birthday, and me weeding her garden just made her feel God's love in a really special way. Now, I could just stop there and say, yes, that's how God works. He sends us to be the hands and the feet. But I got cross with God after that. I thought, why didn't you let me know that it was her birthday, and that why couldn't I be part of knowing that I was doing something special? But instead, God didn't give me any reason why I should weed her garden. It was just, I happened to look down and I saw weeds, so it was natural to me to just pull the weeds out. And I kind of felt ripped off, that God should have shared with me that he wanted me to be part of doing something that was so meaningful. But that's the thing, God doesn't tell us always. He might sometimes give us a special instruction to go and visit somebody at a particular time, but for me, and I think for Mark, he doesn't tell us to do something special. He just tells us to do the ordinary tasks that we find in our hand to do. So for me, it was just pulling out weeds in a garden. And whether we know it or not, whether it seems like an important task, whether we feel we should feel more called to do it or do it on a special day because it's going to mean more to someone, that's not the case. God just wants us to serve, because when we serve, we're expressing our love to others and to him as well. And so I just wanted to finish with reading some verses from Matthew. Too bad. Then the king, this is from Matthew 25, then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you whom my Father has blessed, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you from the founding of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you made me your guest. I needed clothes and you provided them. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me." Then the people who have done what God wants will reply, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and make you our guest, or needing clothes and provide them? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" The king will say to them, "Yes, I tell you that whenever you did these things for one of the least important of these brothers of mine, you did them for me." So when you come back to those two important things that Christianity is all about, love God with all your heart, love others as yourself, when you're doing the second one, you're actually fulfilling the first one as well. By loving others, you are loving God.
That's a very powerful truth. And thank you, Mark and Denise, because you live out what you believe. And it's a powerful thing. It's a very attractive thing when you see what someone believes expressed through their life. And that's what I'm saying about the the quality of people that God is gathering to build a church that, in a sense, is just a little working model of the kingdom and the culture of heaven. And I don't know if you've ever been in an aeroplane at night time and you break through the clouds and you're coming down into the land in the city and all the lights are shining and suddenly all the people are looking out the windows and they're looking down and what was just darkness and nobody was watching, even the people in the middle aisles are looking out the windows, because when light shines, it's so attractive. Grace is this sparkly thing in a world with lots of shining things. Grace outshines everything. And political parties, religions, no matter how well-meaning they are, they can't compete with grace. And it's because everything that man makes is from the top down through rules and regulations to try and create, whereas grace comes from the bottom up. It's everyone faithfully displaying his grace in all its various forms. So your form is different to mine. I am allergic to whippersnippers and mowers and dishwashers and everything. What was it, Brooklyn? Everything involves cleaning. My gift is to make a mess, yes, and for Coral to, yeah. So I just get the band back up, but thank you all for being part of a working model of the culture of heaven, and that how God wants to use all of us together to really shine into our world, into our community. So thank you.